Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good friend, Ty Franck. Hello, Ty. How are you doing?
How you doing, man?
You decided to go.
Right.
You just like a floating head right now because you have a black background, black shirt, and you just went ahead and completely sold your soul to the devil. Like, you decided not to pass go, just going straight evil and darkness. And anyway, today's a very special episode because we have a special guest. Who's our special guest, Ty? And what does she do?
Krista Allian was. You've been on every season, right, Krista?
No, I started in season 2.
Every season of the show?
Almost.
Oh, in season 2. Okay,
yeah.
That's why it feels like you've been on every season.
Yeah.
That's why season 2 we really took off. It's because of Krista.
She is a visual effects producer and the Team 1 visual effects producer. So, because we always have 2 teams alternating. So,
starting in season 3,
she was the producer on Team 1.
Team 1, yeah. We kind of swapped it out. Yeah, after season 3, I was Team 1.
That's right.
Should I explain what Team 1 means?
Yes, please.
Just the only explanation is just means you're the best.
Of course.
Like in those movies where they're like, we're going to need to get the best. Then we go, well,
I'm the person they call.
1.
That's what happened to Krista. She was in her cabin in Niagara Falls, like out in the middle of nowhere, and a helicopter landed. And Rain and Ty and Dan, they got off the helicopter and they came to her and they're like, "You're the only one that can pull this show. You and your team are the only one that can pull this show off."
Close,
and she's like,
close.
"Why did you come to me?"
Signal.
Because you're the best.
Was a signal. That's very close, Ty. Or Wes, it was a signal in the sky instead of a helicopter.
All right. Oh, like
the
a
blue
Batman,
beam.
like a Batman signal, VFX signal.
Exactly. Someone needs visual effects help.
And then it's the mayor. The mayor comes out, and you're like, "Why are you involved in the?" I'm just here. I have one quick question that I've always wondered about, and obviously I didn't wonder about it enough to figure out what it was on the day. But every time we're shooting, at some point when there's visual effects in there, they say we have to get a slate, and there's like a silver ball or something that they. What is that?
So the silver ball, if there's a CG object in the shot, it helps with reflections and lighting so that we can recreate it accurately digitally. So basically the silver ball does double duty. It shows you where all the lights are, it captures all the reflections of the room, and then you basically map that onto your digital object in post. That's kind of old school now. So now a lot of times we're transitioning to HDRIs. So basically it's a photograph that does the same thing, and it's like a 360 of the room. So a lot of times now they'll be like, okay, clear the room for HDRIs, and our friends will run in with a little camera and it'll take like 20 seconds. They just take a photo and they're done.
So that's a good segue though, because this is what I wanted, because the audience is probably, most of them not going to know this. Give us a quick description of what a visual effects producer does.
Okay, I'll try and make it quick. So basically my job is to, in the prep stage, I take a script and I'll break it down and identify what is or could be a visual effects shot, and I'll assign a cost to it. And I work very closely with the visual effects supervisor, basically, where we can't do our jobs without the other. So I'm the money and schedule part, and the supervisor is the creative part. So we work very closely to identify the visual effects shots, how we would shoot them. We work closely with all the other departments to figure out how to shoot them. And then during the shoot, that's kind of our data gathering phase. So we're basically gathering all the materials required to actually do the work. And then our real work starts in post once we have edits, and then we will assess these edits, make sure that what we planned for, what we shot, matches what ended up in the edit. We will assign those to different visual effects houses for them to do the work, because generally speaking, if I'm on a show, it's quite a sizable show in terms of visual effects. So we'll need multiple houses to do the work. You can't assign it to one house, it's just too much. And then once it's all assigned, it's just basically making sure it's done on time and on budget. So bada boom, bada bing.
Now, on our show, the visual effects supervisor was Brett Culp.
That's right.
Who you were his teammate for many years on our show. And you're saying that like he's doing the creative and you're doing the like numbers part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know whenever the producer, like Narain or whoever's producing the episode, would go sit with you guys to go through the shots, you were always there.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't detached from the creative side of
Not
it.
at all.
Like.
No. I mean, there's a lot of overlap, but because a lot of what I do is relaying to the vendors what the vision is too. Like obviously that's Brett's job. He relays the vision as well. But I mean, we just work very closely to make sure that we're understanding Narain properly and we have gathered all the right information and that it's being disseminated properly. So we work very closely with each other to do that. And there is a lot of overlap.
How closely do you work with the directors and producers? Do they come to you with an idea, or do they come to you with like, this is something that we would want, like what can we do here, and you guys help with those, help shape and mold those ideas in terms of budget and what you can do to achieve that?
For sure. Yeah, that happens all the time. But it's not in a vacuum. It's not like we're the only department they're talking to. In a lot of cases, it's like, what part of this vision is practical and what part of this vision is digital? How do we work with the practical departments like stunts and special effects? And how do we complement each other to get the vision that the director or Narain wants? For example, the fly down to Eros in season 2, I think. And there was so many meetings that we had just trying to wrap our head around what is the science behind this sequence, and then how do we shoot it like how do we shoot this, because it seems so impossible. Because I don't know if you recall, but there was a bunch of the people that jumped out of a shuttle, they flew down to Eros, but because it was a spun up asteroid, the gravity was upside down. So like when they got to the grate where they had to land, okay, what direction are they facing? How do they flip around the railing to make sure they're facing the right way? And a lot of it was digital. It was a digital environment. They were all on wires. But then there was a practical component where they built that railing, they built the Eros set, and they actually landed on that set using wires. And then we were just there to facilitate like the paint out of the wires and the set extensions of the practical set. So that's just one example of many where we were just one part of a larger team to bring forth this vision of this sequence.
Well, on the Expanse especially, because anything that was out in space was a 100% CGI shot. Right? Like it's Space Battle or whatever. I think that stuff was much more pre-planned and less director driven than it normally would be, because we would, Narain or I would come to you, or both of us would come to you and say, here's what this battle should look like. And the director's shooting all the inside the spaceship stuff, but they're not shooting anything for the exterior stuff. So it's really not a director thing at that point. It's the producers. Yeah, because I know a lot of times, so Narain gets quickly bored with space battles, like with describing them. So he would go, Ty, you know what the space battle is supposed to look like. Go talk to Brett. And I remember sitting with you and Brett in lots of rooms, drawing on whiteboards, going, and then the ship goes this direction, and the other ship's going this direction, and then it loops around. And we would do a lot of that.
Yeah, a lot of that. And in those situations where it is fully digital, I don't want to speak for Brett, but I recall on several occasions he would say that's he enjoys those the most, because he has a lot more creative leeway to kind of build the sequence, like work with Narain directly to kind of build it, or he has more input on the creative, I guess. And he really enjoyed those space battles. Yeah.
Well, Narain gave Brett the greatest compliment Narain ever gives anybody. When Narain would talk about Brett, he would say, no, Brett's actually a filmmaker, which from Narain, that's the biggest compliment you can get. Because not everybody who works in visual effects has a filmmaking sensibility.
Yeah.
So I think that's why the two of them work together so well. Because Brett is directing those scenes in his head.
Totally. Yeah.
And he has that sort of filmmaking sensibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's a director in his own right, in a sense.
Yep.
So from Ty, when you sit down and say on the chalk on the whiteboard, kind of this is what we're thinking about. Today we're going to be talking about episode 507 later on. There's that great scene where the Rossi's spinning and the PDCs are going every which direction, and they have the formation of the missiles and all that stuff. How much detail goes through in the whiteboard, and then how much does Brett sit back and create, and then does he show you guys like a version, and then you kind of like a rough draft, and then y'all tweak it from there?
Yep.
That's interesting.
No, and Krista can actually talk about that part of it, but so that specific sequence, it's interesting you bring that one up, because that one was a lot of conversation, because there's a lot of things happening there. When the missiles come out of the Zamea and they spread out into that formation, and they're all sort of burning in the same direction. That was a lot of conversation, because the typical sci-fi version is missiles come out and they immediately just zap over at the enemy, right? And the idea that missiles would come out and then continue flying in formation with the ships and then start to fall back toward the other ship was not intuitive. We had to talk about it a bunch of times. But having said that, it's really easy to write shit on a whiteboard. It's super easy to do that. Like, I could just go draw on a whiteboard all day. Taking my crazy random line drawings and coming up with something that actually looks like a real thing, and the way the things would actually move and all of the motion of it and everything, that's all Brett and his people. And we're going to let Krista talk about this, but one of the things that happens all along through that process is they're bringing us sort of rough versions of it and previs of it, and making sure that the motion is right before we spend a ton of money actually rendering things. So that's actually really good. So Krista, talk about the stages of visual effects shot goes from I drew it on a whiteboard to a finished shot in the show. Like,
Right.
The simple version.
Well, first, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Rocket Science. They were our space, the vendor that did all the space shots. And by the end of it, they were so intuitive with all this. A lot of the times we would relay Ty's notes and just let them run with it, because they got it, especially Chris Noakes and John Coldrick. They were the leads there. So when Ty draws his drawings, I take copious amounts of notes, and a lot of the times we'll actually invite the vendors into those conversations so they can ask their own questions. And then they go away, they digest the information, and then they'll put together like a gray shaded version of these shots. And those are called previs. And it's really just to get the motion, the rough blocking of the sequence, is the overall timing working? Are the ships far enough apart? Are they going fast enough? That kind of stuff. It's very rough. And once everyone's happy, then they start going in and doing like lighting versions and rendering it and making it pretty and adding all the gunshots and adding all the railgun fire, like all the effects and the explosions. And that's later down the line. That is a lot of work in of itself, but I think the bulk of the time is spent on the animation of the sequence, just making sure the timing is correct and that it has a filmic sensibility, and that comes from Brett. That's Brett. So he's tweaking it, making sure we're not crossing the line, and all those film rules.
Oh wow!
So,
God,
so yeah,
I hadn't even thought about the camera aspect of those crazy aerial fights, and I mean that's got to be highly difficult. Just crossing the line and different. I've never thought about it from that perspective. That's intense.
Brett would say very often, like, imagine a real camera operator out in space. What would they do? The camera couldn't do this thing you've just animated. So, like, what would a real camera operator do with the camera in this situation? He was always kind of bringing it back to the fact that it needs to be cinematic. Yeah.
Yeah, and just as a producer, those early drafts, those early previs shots are incredibly useful in the editorial process, because it takes a really long time to get a finished visual effect. But what we do in editing is we'll take those previous shots that Krista and Brett and their team have put together and edit them into the show because they're the right length, they're the right duration. They hold that slot. And if you're watching the edit, you get a sense of what would be happening in that scene if you were actually watching the finished version of the show. They're incredibly useful. So they're useful for us in designing the shots, that piece of it, but they're also super useful editorially. So those, I think previs is one of the most important parts of that early
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah. And that's primarily why we do it. It's for the edit, and we will give those previs shots to the editor, and he or she will cut them in a way sometimes that surprises us. And we're like, oh, we never thought of that. Or they'll tweak it a bit, and they'll use it like as if it was a take, and of that has actor action in it, and they'll cut it in as they think it could work. And so primarily it's to help the edit the previs.
So you and Brett spend a lot of time on set while we're shooting.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly are you doing while you're on set?
For me, I am mostly in a supervisor role. I'm just there to make sure that, because in prep, we've done a lot of work breaking everything down and coming up with a plan. So on set, I'm just there to make sure that the plan is being executed the way we thought it should.
So when you're on set, like if they're going to miss a slate, you're the one that has to catch that. Or if they're going to miss something that you're going to need later, or something that you're the one that catches that going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'll make sure that we're getting everything that we all agreed that we're going to shoot. Or if we're not, at least have a discussion about why or what we're going to do differently. Because as you know, things change on set all the time. So being able to be flexible and, come up with new plans on the fly is important. But it's not just me. It's Brett, it's the directors, it's the DOP, it's everyone. We're all in constant conversations about, okay, this was the plan. This is why we can't do this plan anymore. Let's figure out a new way of doing it.
Well, and there's a third member of your team that specifically spends a lot of time on set.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about him?
So our on-set data wrangler, which was Matt, he was with us for several seasons. He was a lot of fun. And actually in season 6, he was promoted to on-set supervisor because due to COVID, we were really restricted in the number of people that we could have on set. And I'm not saying he was promoted only because of COVID. He deserved it.
Matt's like, thanks a lot, Krista.
Great. So his job is to actually gather the data, all the camera information. He was the one with the ball, the silver ball. He would get all the HDRIs and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. Matt's a writer too. Him and I are always talking about his projects and things he's working on. He's a really talented, smart kid.
Yeah, he is.
I love Matt. All right.
Yeah, he's smart. He was the real fun.
I have an example of what you're looking for with the on-set visual effects people from something we fucked up in season 1. So in season 1, we have a shot that's on wires because people are floating, but the director decided to shoot it from above. And nobody really, I guess, caught it. But what happened was there's a bunch of times when the wire is crossing the actor's face. So they can't just paint the wire out like normally they would do. They actually had to digitally recreate the pieces of the face that were blocked by the wire. And it was very expensive. It was a bit of a mess, right? And just, it's season 1. There's all kinds of bugs in things in season 1. That's just everybody is figuring it out. But I do know that from then on, every time we were going to be shooting any kind of flying scene, Brett was right there going, can we make sure the wire doesn't cross that person's face?
Yeah.
like he was right there, man. Like every time we talked about a visual effects shot, there were people who were going to be on wires. Even in the prep meeting, before we've shot anything, we're sitting in the prep meeting, Brett would be going, okay, so what angle are you shot? Can we make sure that the wire doesn't cross anybody's face while we're doing that? So yeah, we learn from our mistakes.
How did you get involved with this craft, with this industry that you're in specifically? Like, is this something that you always wanted to do, or?
Well, I've always wanted to be in film, and I went to school for it, and I actually kind of got made fun of because they're like, "Oh, what are you going to do with a degree in film?" And all my friends in business. Anyway,
Look who's laughing now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I graduated, and I kind of didn't really know specifically what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be an editor, but I kind of just plastered my resume out to anything that was film and television related in Toronto. And it was a visual effects company that picked me up as an intern back in like 2002, I think. Intelligent Creatures. I was their 8th employee, so they were brand new. And I didn't know anything about visual effects when they hired me. I learned everything while I was there. And I had a really great mentor, Wendy Lanning. She taught me so much, and basically everything I know really stemmed from her. So I grew to love it, and it was exciting, and it was interesting, and it was fulfilling. Yeah, no, I just loved it, and I just went from there.
Was that company based out of Toronto?
Well,
it's in Toronto, yeah.
I just want to give a shout out to Wendy. Thank you, Wendy, for
she's great.
Training our future employee.
She's so fantastic. Yeah.
And so, but you're living outside of Niagara Falls now. So do you commute for work when you go into Toronto?
I'm working remotely. So I'm actually on a show that's shooting in Vancouver. Brett's out there now, and they're shooting. They have about 4 weeks left, and he'll come back, and we'll work remotely. They'll edit and do post in LA, but we'll stay here.
So you had you obviously had this interest in film, and that's why you went to school, even when your friends were making fun of you. Was there some films early on that really just inspired you, that really got your attention, that really made you decide that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of artsy fartsy for a long time. Like, I went to a high school of the arts for dance, and was really inspired by all the art people there, and was exposed to a lot of different things. And one of my favorite movies at the time was Wim Wenders' Wings of Desire. I wasn't like interested in film in a way that I would seek out these kind of interesting films, but I was introduced to it by my dance teacher, and we had like created a dance bit kind of around this movie. So, and it just was so inspirational, and I got into like stage management of my high school shows and stuff. So I wasn't a great dancer, I'm going to say that. But you
went
to school, you got into these schools, you had to have some.
Yeah, but I feel like I was like the pity let in, just surrounded by all these amazing dancers who like went on to Broadway and stuff. And then there's me like.
Were you a Fame fan?
Anyway. I was, yeah.
Yeah.
It was like that, but
when Ty gets excited, he always sings the theme song. Like on the podcast, we have like a whole montage of him singing "Fame, I'm gonna live forever."
Yeah.
Well, either that or "Eye of the Tiger." "Eye of the Tiger" is the other great anthem. Yeah. So now that we've said all these nice things about Krista, now we move on to the hard-hitting journalism part. Because while Krista's job is awesome and she's super helpful, she's also, if you're a producer, she's also the one who tells you can't have the things that you want.
I do not.
She's like you are the mom of visual effects, and you were like, hey, can I have this visual effect? You're like, no. You can't have that one. That's too expensive. I don't know if I've ever
phrased it like that.
That is part of your job.
I don't know if I've ever
but that's what Ty hears.
Right.
That's all I hear. I'm like, but I want a visual effect. And she's like, no, you already have some visual effects at home.
It's all
and
about
these are too expensive. You can't
Ty.
have these.
You need to make choices. Give something up to get something.
Because Ty's like, in this scene, we'll have a woolly mammoth run up and start tearing people apart. And then a UFO comes down and sucks the woolly mammoth up. And you're like, no, Ty. No, first of all, that makes no sense for the Expanse. But second of all, you can't have all the visual effects you want.
Now, my joke, and Noreen and I used to joke about this in the office. So you have these meetings, you have meetings with Brett and Krista, you have meetings with Manny, who was our line producer. You have all these meetings with people whose job it is to make sure we don't spend all of the money. And, you're sitting in the office afterwards, and it always felt like we'd come in, we'd be like, hey, so there's a scene. It's 40,000 spaceships and 300 guys with laser guns fighting on the surface of a planet. And they would counter with, no, it's 2 people talking in a room. Okay, so how about 7 spaceships and 3 people with laser guns? Now it's 4 people talking in the room, but they have a TV in the background. And there's this back and forth until you finally wind up with one person on a spaceship and he has a TV in the background. So it's like this ongoing negotiation of here's what we want. And they're like, here's what you can afford. And eventually you wind up in the middle somewhere.
I would like to point out, though, that you did get your scene of all these people shooting guns with all these ships and people fighting on the surface of the planet in episode 606. You finally got it.
Yes. Yes, we did.
See, this is her. Ty, you got all the things that you wanted, so don't be ungrateful, okay? There's other producers out there that don't get the things that they want, all right? You're lucky.
See, I told you she's the mom of VFX. She's the one who tells you can't have stuff and tells you to be grateful for what you got. There are kids in China who don't even have visual effects.
I think it's nap time, Ty.
Yeah. Nah. One of the things I was going to ask you, what really blew my mind when I first learned, 1, how expensive the visual effects are, and 2, how long it takes to get these things done. So my question to you is, how do they measure the price? Is it time, or is it the amount of labor that has to go into it? And second, how do you kind of have an idea when they pitch an idea? If they pitch an idea to you, you immediately have an idea how much time that's going to take, or kind of in the neighborhood, so you can kind of give a realistic projection of what that's going to take?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of cost, you're right, it is based on time, and each vendor, they all have their own calculations of what their day rate is, basically. And the way I kind of estimate how much something's going to cost is how many days will it take this vendor to do it? Okay, it's going to take 2 days to animate, 1 day to light, 2 days to comp, okay, so 5 days, and then you multiply that by our estimated day rate. And that's generally how you get the cost. I would say that Brett and I were pretty close on the Expanse, just because we worked with the same vendors for so many seasons that you kind of get a feel for what their day rate is and then how long it takes them to do things. Yeah, and then that translates to time. So okay, this is how much it costs based on how long it's going to take them, then it's going to take them that long to actually do the work. However, the complicated factor is they probably have a lot of other work to do at the same time too. So it's just factoring in, okay, well, how many shots did we give this vendor? At what time? When is it due for final? And just managing, I mean, it's really up to them to manage their resources and make sure they're not taking on too much work and stuff. But it's kind of like that negotiation of okay, you have this much work to do in this amount of time, and then just figuring it out, managing it. Yeah.
I'm in the middle of a construction project right now, and that's I can if you're trying to get your cabinets done and you go in there and that they have 20 other jobs down the way, but you need these cabinets done next month because the drywall guy and the paint guy and everybody's behind that guy. So you're trying to figure out a way to get in front of the line, and everybody else is trying to figure a way to get in front of the line, but without spending more, and so it's a big trick on how to do that.
Time is just as important a commodity as money. Sometimes more so. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you don't have enough time, you can't do it.
So Brett and Krista, because they know that producers are TV producers are very, very stupid people. What they do for us is they break it down to one number. So they have like a sort of like general generic cost per shot so that they give that number to us. Like they don't give us any of these details. They don't give us any of the complicated stuff. Like here's one number that even a producer can understand. And so that's what we kind of went off is that there's just sort of a single number that they would give to us.
Yeah, and we built out some pretty charts too. Like it got to the point where it's like, okay, let's just add some colors and then they'll be more engaged. Oh, look, a pie chart.
Does the pressure come squarely on you and Brett if they need a shot soon or if a shot's running behind, or do you guys take that? Because I think typically and Ty, correct me, but usually with the Expanse, we're usually waiting on the VFX. Like, is that the last thing to kind of finalize going forward?
Yeah, the visual effects shots are getting dropped. The finished ones are getting dropped in last. I mean, it's not the final piece of the process because once those are in, then there's a whole bunch of other post processes we do, like, you know, the sound and color grading and all that stuff happens after that. But on our show, definitely the last piece that took the most time was visual effects. But we never were in a position that I can remember where a visual effects shot was the thing that stopped us from getting something done on time. So that's a testament to Brett and Krista and their team and the other members of the team. I mean, it's more than just the two of them. It's a whole team that they just did a really good job of forecasting how long things were going to take and then making sure that much time was built into the process so that they could actually get done. But we did have a few visual effects shots that really felt like we were down to the wire, you know, where it's like, boy, I hope that comes in tomorrow. But it always did. You know, we never missed a deadline.
Well, it's like gas filling a room, right? We will take as much time as we're given. And really, it's not that we're being lazy about it. It's that we want to make it as good as it possibly can be. So you're going to have to pry it from our hands at the last moment because we want it to be awesome. So
what was the most challenging shot you did in the Expanse, and what was the shot that you're most proud of that you and Brett and the vendor and all the team pulled off?
The most challenging, that's a hard question because there were a lot of challenging shots.
I know. It doesn't, I guess the one that comes to mind being particularly hard.
Oh, goodness.
I think we talked about this on the email, but for me as somebody that doesn't know anything about visual effects, watching it, the whole ring gate stuff and people getting thrown through the airs and crates and all the shooting and the crashing and all that stuff in season 6 and in season 6, that seemed to me, I was like, whoa, they're going out in our finale. They're just going out in a blaze of glory with that one.
Yeah. Yeah, that was challenging for the volume. Like basically every shot from a certain point on was a visual effects shot, and not just like a monitor comp. It was like a fully digital environment or lots of effects and explosions and quite complex storytelling with the ships moving and hiding behind Medina Station and then the shot of you going down to the surface. Like that shot alone. Okay, I'll tell you what, that shot was probably one of the hardest because it was so long and there were so complex. There were so many assets in that shot with all the different pods moving around, the ring station below, Medina, Rossi, and then your practical element. Like actually we had to stitch together a bunch of different plates to make it work. The way it plays, it looks like it's one seamless take, and I think we shot it that way too. But just the way to make it work seamlessly with all the CG elements, we had to kind of stitch it all together. But yeah, that one was quite complex, very complex.
So what it sounds like what you're saying is Breck, the director, kind of screwed it up and you had to fix it for him. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly what I'm saying.
All right, how far away are you guys in technology from making actors irrelevant? You could just have visual effects actors.
Well, I mean, it depends if you want good performances, but like, I mean, technically we are, it's now, but I mean, you still need performances.
Shut your mouth.
Well, no, remember there
How
was
dare
that shot.
you?
There was that shot of Amos on the hull, fully digital Amos walking around on the hull. I forget what episode it was. It was in season 6. But we still
that was all me. Don't claim that was no. That's all me. I was in the hole. I was on the hole the whole time doing it.
And I was gonna say, like, every time Wes in the show had to take his shirt off, you guys had to CGI abs.
Correct.
So he's already like half CGI because you're like,
I want to thank you for that. By the
way,
the point I was going to make is that we still shot your face. Like, we shot your face from like a bunch of different angles so that we could get a real performance in there, so it wouldn't feel dead. Like, technically we created a digital Amos, but we still need the actor to bring it to life.
You hear that, Ty? You're always going to need the actor, buddy.
For now.
I can't wait till we
the next show I make is going to be a cartoon, so I can just get rid of you guys.
Traitor.
But that's a great segue, Wes, though, because you asked her about the hardest ones. The thing I want to ask her about, so in season 1, and this is famous, this is like a running joke for 6 seasons of the show, and Brett was always really super good natured about it. The wrench, that wrench that goes flying off the ship in the pilot, in the second episode of the first season, that we gave Bob, who was our visual effects supervisor at the time, such shit about because it's so wrong. And obviously Bob took it with good fun, and Brett was always trying to find ways to put that wrench into every season of the show because it's like sort of the running gag that wrench shows up everywhere. So it was all in fun, but there's always those shots that you're watching, and believe me, as a writer, I see tons of this where I'm watching an episode for some reason, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could get that line back. That's not the line I would have written. Like, I wish I could get that one back. What's it, after now having done 4 seasons or 5 seasons of our show, what's the shot that when you see it on screen, you go, oh my God, I wish I had that one back. I really wish I had one more chance at that. What's the one?
I think I may have wiped it from my memory. I can't recall at the moment.
Such a politician.
Yeah.
I can't remember. There's not really one that. Okay.
This is the subtext.
Okay, I do have one.
We're so good that we just everything I watch, I'm like, wow, that was incredible.
Yeah,
I'd never make any mistakes.
Well, that's why the mayor comes.
All right, so tell us about the one. So you had one. Tell us about the one.
There may have been one of the. Remember the proto-molecule creature? I would say if we had more time, we could have made that better.
In season 2?
Yeah. That one was never really my favorite, but I mean, I'm not disparaging the work we did on it, but I just think we could have done better.
Yeah.
That's all.
That was a great answer, and it was an honest answer, and you that endears you to us that much more. But a lot of that could have been Elias's performance too, don't you think, Ty? Yeah, he probably really messed you guys up on that.
You did have to work around Elias's shoddy, half-assed performance. Yeah. So,
there's an example where a fully digital, non-actor version would have been better. Who needs actors?
Cold-blooded.
There's a reason why we try to kill Elias on every season of the show.
And he just keeps...
We try very hard to make sure we kill him on every season.
Elias is the personification of the proto-molecule where you try to eradicate him in every episode and he just keeps coming back.
One of the things we were talking about doing is a top 5 list of, the top 5 visual effects shots that throw us out of the movie. So that's why I wanted to talk about shots that when you watch them, you're like, oh, God, I wish I had that one back. This is
some of the stuff that I kind of was coming up with. I mean, there's so many lists out there that have cringe things. Like, I mean, obviously, like one of the first Uncanny Valley that was just absolutely horrible was The Mummy Returns.
Oh my God, that Mummy Returns one, the where it's the scorpion guy.
I would like to say though that was leading edge in terms of visual effects at the time.
True.
So
At the time, yeah.
even though it doesn't
Oh,
age
wait.
very well, it like at the time it was cutting edge stuff. So
Okay, but here's the thing: is it doesn't matter, because the issue isn't like, because I'll watch like Last Starfighter, and it's incredibly primitive. It's like watching somebody bang two rocks together, but I'm still in the movie.
Yeah.
I'm still sucked into the story. It doesn't throw me out. What we're talking about is visual effects, whether they were cutting edge or not, that were very ill-advised, because it's, when you watch it, it gives you the opposite emotional reaction that what they were hoping for. When you're laughing at the visual effect rather than being frightened by it or being excited by it, that's not what they were hoping for, right? And I get, I mean, like, obviously older visual effects look worse than new ones, but they're still, if they were appropriate at the time and they fit the story and they weren't throwing you out with like, what the fuck, then I think they're okay. It doesn't matter that they're primitive, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion.
It's a good point.
Because everything, 20 years later, everything's going to look worse.
Except for Jurassic Park for some reason.
Jurassic Park, yes.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Jurassic Park just never started looking worse.
Yeah. Honestly, it's better than the sequels, in my opinion.
I think it is. Yeah. And chalk some of that up to Spielberg knows where and when and how to use a visual effect. And what they did was very seamlessly integrate practical stuff. Because a lot of the Tyrannosaurus Rex scenes, they're using an actual robotic head to do the stuff. And so you don't get that. Yeah. So you don't get that the thing that knocks you out is when something feels weightless. When like the effect doesn't feel like it's really in the space and occupying space and has weight to it. And the thing that in my opinion, Jurassic Park did better than anybody else has ever done is every one of those dinosaurs feels heavy and massive, and they shake the ground when they move. And part of that is integration with sound effects, obviously. But they're just shot in a way where they never feel like a weightless bunch of pixels flying around the screen,
Yeah.
And that's filmmaking. That's, Spielberg's a great
filmmaker.
And
even though I'm from the digital world, I'm a huge proponent in when you can go practical, that's your best route. It's and Jurassic Park is a perfect example of that marriage between the two. And just because you can make something digital doesn't mean you should. There's lots of examples where it doesn't work.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I think that is where good filmmaking comes in, because it's both ways, though, because there's plenty of times on The Expanse when we tried to use something practical to save money on a visual effect, and it actually cost us more money to fix what was done practically with visual effects later. And so we got better and better as time went on at knowing where that line was, and you guys knowing where the line was. So like we were like, okay, and then he reaches out and he hits a wrench and it flies away. And then, special effects would be like, well, we could put a wrench on a wire, and you guys would be going, no, just let us do it, because then we're not going to be trying to hide the wire and fix all this stuff.
Lightning literally, we're in a tornado warning right now. Lightning literally just like struck by the house, and it just all the power went out and everything like that. It was it reminded me of Something Wicked This Way Comes. So I see you guys got to the top 5.
Yeah, we're just talking about the difference between. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to bash old special effects, right? Because I always talk about like, the Last Starfighter. Those are super primitive visual effects, but I love that movie, and those effects are appropriate for the scenes that they're in, and they're like, there's nothing wrong with that. So it's not about bashing old special effects. It's about visual effects that are so inappropriate in the scene and poorly done that instead of the reaction that the scene is supposed to give you, it gives you the opposite reaction, where instead of a dramatic scene, you're laughing at it, right? Or instead of a scary scene,
and I think
you're just laughing at
the trick too is, trying to really look and see how far ahead of its time, even though if it's an old movie like The Abyss, really looking and seeing how far ahead of its time
Yeah.
the Abyss is and what it's accomplished.
Yep.
Krista, do you watch movies differently now that you know what you know about visual
Oh
effects?
yeah,
And
my family hates. Yeah, totally. My family hates watching movies with me because I'll just like be beside them like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. Like, oh, that looks awful. And they'll just be like, shut up. I don't care if it's bad or good. Just let me watch it.
What's hilarious, because of the delay in the spotty internet, it sounds like you just go, my family hates me, and it just stopped. Like full stop. And I was like, oh,
well, that's a whole other conversation, Wes.
You can share that here. We're here for you.
This is a safe
Ty
space.
and I don't hate you. Yeah, this is a safe space.
Thanks,
this is let it go.
Oh, there were plenty of times I hated on Krista, but it wasn't because she's a bad person or unlikable in any way. It's because she was telling me I couldn't have toys that I wanted, and I was very angry about that. But yeah,
do you think that's why
her
family hates her? Because, you know, like if they're like, you know, anytime like a family get together that they want to have something special there, she just like, no, sorry, can't have it. Yeah.
She shows up with her spreadsheet and tells them why it's too expensive. Yeah. Like, you can't have this. You already had 3 of these, and it cost this much.
No,
and if you have any more, you're going to go over budget.
Nephews, sorry.
Oh
God damn it! Just let us have some.
I feel like it's the opposite, though. In my personal life, I don't want to do anything what I do for work, so I'm like the opposite. I'm just like, everyone can have whatever they want. Cake for everybody.
Cake for everybody.
Like in real life, she doesn't even balance her checkbook.
Yeah. That's Jeff's job.
I understand that, though, because so much of your life is tied up in spreadsheets at work. Like, when you get home, like, the last thing you probably ever want to see is a spreadsheet.
All right, did you explain the top 5 to her, how it works?
Yeah, so what we were going to talk about is top 5 terrible, ill-advised visual effects is what we want to do.
Wait, the Sam Jackson Deep Blue Sea, that's a great shot. When the shark comes in and eats him.
So, are they out?
What the hell is happening right now?
What was that, Wes?
What was all that crazy sound going on?
I don't know. What was going on?
Are you talking to me, Tom?
Someone's watching Netflix in the background.
Yeah, there was like all of a sudden there was like this loud sound and like people,
that's not me.
Like it sounded like a movie was playing in the background. Wow, it's not me. It must be Krista.
It's all the family that hates her. They're trying to mess up her podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no. So the scene we're talking about in Deep Blue Sea. Deep Blue Sea is great. Tommy Jane is in it. He's great. Sam Jackson's in it. He's great. That's all great. The scene though that is widely mocked on the internet is the terrible CGI of the shark when it bites Sam Jackson. Spoiler alert, Sam Jackson gets bit. That one scene is so off-puttingly bad that instead of being surprised by the shark, you're laughing at it. You're just laughing your ass off at the terrible CGI.
What,
just
is that scene where the shark comes out of the water and eats Sam Jackson?
Yeah.
That surprised me. I didn't see that coming. Can we jump up to the top 5 best? Because if we go through we want to be respectful of Krista's time. So let's do the top 5 best digital VFX.
You would rather do best than worst? We always do best. I want to do worst.
Okay, well, we can do worst. But we do one or the other.
Yeah, I want to do worst because we always do best and fawn over movies. Let's do some hard-hitting journalism today. Let's speak truth to power, man.
Okay, Escape from LA is going to be number 1 on my list right now. That is a heartbreaking on so many ways.
Okay, but I specifically for me, because I want to focus in on like specific scenes. Specifically for me, the surfing in the LA River is the most laughably terrible visual effects shot maybe of all time.
But it was a bad story point. Yeah. It was a bad, it was bad all the way around.
And for me, I would put the Han Solo meets Jabba the Hutt. That's number 2 for me because 1. It's unnecessary. You added a scene that didn't need to be there to a classic film, and in doing so, inserted one of the worst visual effects in the original trilogy. Like, why would you do that? That's like 2 terrible things at the same time. I mean, a one that everybody talks about right now, and deservedly so, is the mustache erasure in Justice League. It is so weirdly off-putting. Like every time it's on screen, just the viewer just feels like something is wrong. That like it is a very odd choice that they made to do that.
Krista, do you have any movies that may not be on this list that you thought that really take you out? You know, you talked about how your family doesn't like it. Like, is there anything that you can think off the top of your head that really took you out of the movie?
I mean, nothing specific. I mean, nothing's coming to mind at the moment, but just based on your list, for me, like Polar Express is up there. Just the Uncanny Valley thing is like totally freaky for me.
Yeah.
It just wasn't quite, they didn't quite nail it. Now, I do want to make a distinction between bad VFX and just bad design, because Cats, the Butthole edition, is bad. Freaking horrible. But it's not the visual effects. It was well executed. It was just a horrible design. You know, it's like, who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah.
That's a really great distinction.
I mean, that is a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
The thing is I'm a Last Starfighter fan, okay? But even at the time when I was a kid, I thought graphics in video games at the time looked better than the end of The Last Starfighter. I do think that a movie can be great and just have bad visual effects in them. And I think even for the time, The Last Starfighter, the visual effects in that, what it feels like to me when I watch it, it's almost like the previs. Like it's almost like they ran out of money.
Yeah.
And they were just like, just put the previs up there and did it. And so for me, you know, that I think number 5 would be The Last Starfighter.
Disagree.
Really?
Yeah.
Over something like The Rock in The Mummy Returns, which is maybe one of the worst visual effects I've ever seen.
So here's the thing. I keep getting confused about, I'm so used to doing like our top things that we love, you know?
Yeah.
And then finding the reason to make it work, talk love. Okay. Yeah, you're right. The Rock is bad. Yeah. Do that.
Well, and here's the thing with that scene is it's so ill-advised. It's so off-putting. And they just wanted to have The Rock's face in the scene. And I get that. The Rock is a huge movie star. They just wanted to have his face in the scene. They didn't have the capability of doing it without making it look terrible, and they did it anyway. Like, if you try something and it doesn't work, that's okay. Just don't do that thing. But they forced it in just so they could slap his face in that scene.
Yeah.
Knowing that it was terrible. Knowing that it looked terrible. Yeah.
Now, the thing is,
for me, that's the worst.
I would vote I Am Legend. The zombies take you out of the whole I Am Legend movie, and it kind of messes up the movie. It's the least interesting zombies in all zombie movies. Cool. That's our top 5.
Do we at least want to read the top 5 that the patrons did vote on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we could probably do this really quick. I mean, if we look at the top 5, because we know that Mad Max Fury Road is going to be on there. We know that The Matrix is going to be on there. I would vote, and I know for a fact that you would agree with me with Mad Max and Matrix. I don't know if you would agree with me on this, but Dune 2021 I thought was fantastic from a visual perspective.
Oh, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful.
Did you see it, Krista?
I did. Yeah.
What did you think of it?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah. It's so good.
And we already all agreed that Jurassic Park does not age. Like, it still looks as good today as it did when we were all blown away by it, like, what, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it was.
Chris, would you say that it goes on the top 5, Krista? The latest Dune?
Yeah, I wouldn't be offended if it was there.
300 is out of the question. That's that's off the list.
I mean, just from a purely technical standpoint, obviously Avatar is a stunning visual effects.
Oh, Terminator 2 for sure.
Yeah, and Terminator 2. I mean, James Cameron was inventing visual effects to go in his movie. Why is The Abyss
not on here?
You know, when he's like, yeah, because The Abyss is really the movie that invented the visual effects that then Terminator made use of.
You got to put Abyss on there. I would take Abyss over Terminator 2 because I have never seen, when the water creature in the Abyss, I've never seen anything like that. That blew my mind when I saw it. Yep,
I agree. And everybody has been using that effect ever since. James Cameron launched a whole new style of visual effect with that scene. Krista and us, we were talking about the best movies are the ones that know how to seamlessly integrate their visual effects and their practical effects. And for me, Mad Max Fury Road is top of the list in that. The way that they integrated the practical, I mean, because those cars were all real. They were really crashing them, all that stuff. And then in almost every case, very tastefully putting in the visual effects that, rounded it out or whatever. To me, that's one of the best directed movies of like the last 10 years for me.
The first time I felt fear for stunts or effects in movies is the first time I saw Mad Max, where they, the shit that they were doing. I was like, there's some stunt people have died for that movie, or so watching Fury Road, you watch that and you can't see where their performance and the practical cars and the practical wrecks end and the VFX begins. And the whole time you're like, people are dying making this. There's no way that people are surviving. It's just so insane. So in terms of serving the story and serving the movie, I agree with you, Ty. I think Mad Max Fury Road is just seamless. It's a classic.
Do you agree, Krista?
I agree. The effects in it, I mean, the effects, stunts, special effects, it was also visceral. And like Wes said, you can't distinguish between what's real and what's not. And that's the perfect kind of visual effects. Like we're meant to, we've done our job right if you don't know that we've ever been there, if you don't know what's a visual effect, we've done our job right.
All right, so this is what the Patreon members picked. And we see how close we are. Matrix, Avatar, Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings, Fury Road. Very, very close.
See, they always get 3 out of 5.
Yeah, that's their,
like it seems like every time, but they get 3 and then have 2 different ones.
That's their average.
And I would agree with that list too. Like,
you know what?
It's tough to choose.
And Lord of the Rings was pretty groundbreaking when it came out.
Same with Matrix.
Yeah, I forgot about Lord of the Rings. Well, thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you so much, Krista, for giving us your time and hanging out with us. And it was such a fun
invite. It was a lot of fun.
Podcast to learn about your job and everything.
And let me add, if you don't like and subscribe and comment on this, then Krista's going to feel really terrible. So if you want Krista to feel good about herself, make sure you give us the thumbs up, and
because her family already hates her.
Subscription.
Yeah, I'll come to your house with a spreadsheet.
Yeah, she needs you guys. She needs you guys to look out for her.
If you don't like and subscribe, Krista will come to your house and tell you what you can and can't have, and she'll bring a spreadsheet to the house.
Thank you for your time, Krista.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming to hang out with us, and hopefully the people listening to this also appreciate you and give you a like and a subscribe, so that you don't feel bad about yourself.
Thanks.
Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty. Bye for now.